My fuzzy thing is gone. So we'll see what happens when it comes to my sound. The wind is coming up. If it gets obnoxious, um, I'll have to go find a different fuzzy thing. But it's fallen down here somewhere in the black arc chips, so I don't think I'm going to be able to pick it out. So I'm back sans microphone fuzzy thing. So I did clean up mom's house. Yes. Mom and dad live up the way. We have a family compound here. My brother has a place. I have a house. My sister has a cottage. My parents have a cottage. And then we have a guest cottage. So we have a family compound here. My parents are gone for 2 weeks. And I was renovating my house while they were gone. And I put my cat in my mom's bathroom because she didn't have a place to go. So kind of prioritized the needs of my cat over the pristineness of my mom's bathroom. But she's an animal lover too. So we're talking about Sun Uranus aspects earlier. And I did not get to talking about the relationship between the father and uniqueness, independence, and rebelliousness. Because when we're looking at what describes the father or the masculine figure in our life or in our past, we look at the sun, we look at Mars, we look at Saturn. And then we look at aspects of other planets to Sun, Mars, or Saturn, or to each other to tell us a deeper story or more details about the qualities or ways of being of the father figure. So when we're looking at Sun Uranus, we are you have to be mindful of the aspect, but we're looking at qualities of uniqueness, genius, counterculturalness, uh, authoritarianness, um, attitudes within the father figure with the difficult aspects that are very much about my way or the highway. There's a lack of cooperation or of willingness to harmonize or work together. So, particularly with the opposition, with the square, with the conjunction too, and with the minor hard aspects, the sesquiquadrate, this the semi square, we can be coming from a past where we had a scary, forceful, authoritarian masculine figure, father figure. And so we didn't have a good model of cooperation or harmony. We didn't have a good model of inclusion. We were often the black sheep or the outcast of the family when we have these hard aspects from Sun to Uranus. And so that is going to be a foundational identity story. We talked about that in part one. And so as we work through that, we're working through the inability for our father figure, the masculine figure, the proactive figure in our past to do the hard work of including others, having patience, forming more of a coalition rather than just bringing down the hammer and making demands. And so we have to pick up where the father or the if it was the mother, because sometimes the mother played both roles, whoever it was that is, in our eyes, playing that, role of the father figure, the leader. And so we have to bring our own self into the fold with these difficult aspects. That's not a hard lesson with the easy aspects. This is something that we are able to do without effort. We can be an individual and have the exclusivity of our individuality while also being able to cooperate or tolerate inclusion when we see it's in our best interest. The two things can exist side by side. We don't have to lose ourselves just because we say yes to something or we agree to something or we allow uh, suggestions to change us or we give in somehow or we accept new information. Yeah, that is a threat to the old identity. And you better believe it is. And we will resist that to the degree that we haven't really come to understand our own rebellion or our reasons why we have to go our own way, even when it makes things harder for ourselves. When we finally have that insight that that's not really, that kind of behavior is not really in service to a better life experience, it's in service to specialness, then we can kind of slap ourselves upside the head and have that breakthrough. But we get this from the training from the father figure. We get these ideas and these ego structures and this identity, you know, this identity from being raised by somebody that themselves was taking shortcuts or cutting corners when it comes to getting agreement, having everybody be on the same page, achieving understanding, using patience and experience and language to get what we want, rather than just stomping around and being more insistent or being scary or authoritarian in some way. So we ourselves have that echo. And with the hard aspects, we do not want to be like that father figure. And when I wrap up here, I'm going to go over to my YouTube subscriber group. We're going to talk about the specifics of the behavior related to that opposition in particular. So we have to look at what we're rebelling against, and is it actually in service to to the outcome that we want, or are we saying no to say no? There is a certain genius that we produce, that we're capable of with any of the aspects between Sun and Uranus, because a genius is originality. It's making a leap that nobody else has made, putting something together in a different way, seeing something different, understanding something different, coming up with a different product, different viewpoint. It doesn't have to do with IQ. Innovation and genius and book smarts and memory, those are not re they're not the same thing. We can be smart, but not be intelligent. We're becoming more and more intelligent as we're sifting through what we need to react to and what we don't, and why we're reacting and what we don't when we have the difficult aspects. We're learning to be more efficient with what it is that we respond to. We can be really reactive and rebellious early in life, and it wastes our time and our energy. But it gives us a lot of different ways to prove ourselves to ourselves. So when we really come into a more confident understanding of our abilities, um, we get to know ourselves better. We understand our knee jerk reactions. We understand our rebellion. Maybe we acknowledge it even and then understand it. This is when we come into our really effective years. And we can actually make up for a lot of wasted time, and a lot of arguments, and a lot of resistance. We can make that up pretty quickly because we do have the power of innovation, the power of seeing things differently, doing things differently. We can be very marketable if we are cooperative. So going with the flow and sometimes participating. Going with the flow is always good for us, but sometimes participating is good for us. We have to know when it is and when it isn't. Because with any of the aspects between Sun and Uranus, we're not built to follow. But sometimes following is a good decision. It depends on what it is that's happening. So if it's in your best interest, if it makes sense, follow the leader. They probably have some good things going on. But if it is something that really does go against your sense of self, your wisdom, your understanding of, what is likely to happen next, then we are built to say no. We are built to rebel. We're built for dissent. And if we have individuated, we may rise to the top and become the new leader because we have that capability. Because we ourselves have become master and commander of our own willpower. That's not being messed with by everything. And then we just use our willpower to try to gain, and dismiss, cancel, cancel, cancel. It's waste, waste, waste. It's very immature. It's an immature way of thinking ourselves up. But you come past that, and then you can really recognize who really is full of crap. And you do more than just call people out. You'll actually offer something of substance or maybe even step up. That's the higher potential of Sun Uranus stuff. And we can be a reluctant leader when we've come through the individuation process. We are not a reluctant leader when we haven't. We'd like to be the one that does have some kind of status or some mantle, and then we can claim that we don't like it, but that's part of the ego structure. I don't want this. I don't want this at all. I've only campaigned for it, but I just don't want this. Those kinds of ideas. So there is a way that people have with electricity, with Sun Uranus aspects as well. The easy aspects in particular, the conjunction or machines. You know, some people, it's like they just understand machines, that the mechanics of things. Sun Uranus aspects can lead to a more effortless or intuitive understanding of systems and of how, you know, various moving parts or constituent component parts of things actually work together in a more complex, successful system. Uh, Often the father was either involved in politics, electricity, entrepreneurial business, um, you know, things having to do with self-employment. The in conjunction's interesting. I'll talk about this one more in my subscriber group. But very often, father was so countercultural that he was actually limited in some ways. Freedom was limited in some way. Hey, Michael. Oh, sorry, my neck. I'm gonna reach out here, but I've been lifting really heavy things. Okay, and you've got the square. So you were an easy child to raise. The square and the opposition. Oh my goodness. We like to be ourselves, and it's easier to raise like Sun Venus children for sure. Uh, so because they want to be liked. That's not part of our identity with Sun Uranus stuff. We want to be free or we want to be me. And we tend to stamp our feet and have more pushback and, um, you know, more fits earlier in life. So it's wonderful to have that kind of independence and ability to recognize it's good for you as an adult. It is hell on earth to try to raise a kid that doesn't conform or that doesn't really respect the idea of authority. Yeah, I had a son like that. Makes for an adult that you can definitely trust to run their own life, but it's so difficult to try, you know, to parent a child that has a nature of challenging, uh, yeah, challenging authority or what seems to not be legitimate. That was a big thing. With my son, I had to be real careful about what kind of rules I made or what I asked of him. If I couldn't back it up, if there wasn't a reason, if it wasn't legitimate, then he didn't have any respect for it. So, yeah, Sun Uranus or Mars Uranus kids, the willpower is so strong and so geared towards going against what isn't like real. or what is the word? Justified. That's what it is. That's what it is. They don't conform unless it's justified. So that was something I learned early on was, don't say things to this boy like, no, you can't spend the night over here because I said so. Or eat your peas, because I said so. No, that's not good enough. There has to be a reason. It has to be justified. I have to explain it. And then, I could get him, because he was a reasonable person, I could get him to see what it was about. But you're dealing with children with Sun Uranus or Mars Uranus aspects. It doesn't matter what the aspect is, they're very precocious and they will challenge what other children will put up and shut up about. And then we'll tell those children that they're bad or they're difficult or there's something wrong with them. And it is a more demanding personality to deal with. But there's a lot to be said for a child that thinks for themselves. And we need to nurture that quality rather than try to stamp it out. With the hard aspects, we try to stamp it out because we see it as difficult. We're like, well, don't talk back to me. Or I don't have to tell you why. You can't spend the night at so-and-so's house. It's because I said so. Get out of my face. No, not good enough. This lazy parenting that comes from a lazy, cutting corners style of, being. And it does take more effort and energy to explain yourself or to speak to a child with respect, or to even acknowledge that a 7-year-old deserves an explanation or the deference of being told why this or that or what is what. And we can't make up rules that are arbitrary or meaningless or wasteful when we're dealing with Mars or Sun Uranus children, because they will break them. But that is their nature, to go against what is illegitimate or ill-formed or not justified. So with my son, I had to parent him more loosely than what I wanted or planned, because that was his nature. With my daughter, it's actually very different. She needed a lot more closeness, structure, um, more of a watchful eye. She needed more eyes on her. And my son needed space, understanding, room to mess up, room to learn on his own. Children are like that. My mom, she had 6 of us. This was something she would talk about a lot. She would say that, I've had 6 kids and I parent every one of them differently because they're all different people with different needs and different tolerances. And, you can say one thing to one child and, it's like they won't even hear you. But you say the same thing to a different child and they need therapy because it affects them so deeply. Oh, that was definitely proven with my 2 children. They got very different sides of me because they were different and they needed different sides of me. See, we're lacking that kind of deference and understanding from a parent when we have the hard aspects. We just, we're kind of seen as more underfoot or even not not worthy of an explanation. Like if a cat asked you for details, you'd be like, get the fuck out, you're a cat. Well, it wouldn't matter to the cat, but it matters to a child. So, yeah, just super, super interesting aspects to deal with. I like people with Sun Uranus aspects most of the time. They can be stinky, absolutely. But I don't know. I think that, you know, independence of spirit, even if they give you a hard time, there's a lot to be said for having people in your life that it can see differently. They have a radical viewpoint, or that can bring something fresh into our life. Because the nature of Uranus is that it does upset the system, always. There's something about us that is, if we have Sun Uranus qualities, the hard aspects, there is something about us that is not normal. It's not regular. It's not predictable. And if we find our tribe, if we learn to get to be ourselves without sticking it in someone's eye and causing problems, because we both get to coexist, we both get to have our expression. We really are acting in a spirit of tolerance. You know, life can be really fun with these aspects. We can be fun, real fun. These are some of the hardest partying people in the world. And that doesn't mean that, we're all Cyndi Lauper at 25, but they do have a way of losing themselves in the moment. So there's a lot to appreciate about these aspects. These are the movers and shakers of the world. Very inventive. And look at the house that these aspects fall into. That's going to be the area of life that you're going to see the most transformation of willpower, where we can go from feeling blocked to feeling helped, to feeling recognized, when we really come through those limiting identity stories about being the outcast, not being included, nobody likes us, and really come into the fold. But it has to be the fold that you want. You're not for everybody. Even under the most healed, individuated circumstances, an individuated person realizes that they're not for everybody. If we have to appeal to everybody, we have a codependency problem. We're trying to be a chameleon when we really need to be ourselves and accept that not everybody is going to find that that is their cup of tea. But that is what keeps out who isn't for us. We don't want to be everybody's cup of tea, because then we have to chameleon like into their teacup and make oh, look at me, I'm black tea. Well, I'm white tea. White tea is my favorite. I love white tea, especially like lavender and lavender chamomile white tea. No, I don't want to be black tea. I don't want to be green tea either. I like green tea. Sometimes it gives me a little bit of a stomachache if I drink it too fast. But white tea, it just doesn't have any of the tannins in it that the other teas have. So you gotta pick. What kind of cup of tea do you want to be? Red tea is good too. Like red tea. All kinds of herbal teas. You know, I never used to like orange, but I like orange now that I've gotten older. Like citrus teas. There are some strange teas out there. Exotic teas. That might be you. And it may be that as you come into your fullness and go through your individuation process that you discover that maybe you're a more common cup of tea. But we become okay with that because that's what we want to be. Thing is, if you're making up your identity in spite of somebody or because you don't want to be like your dad or like that masculine figure who raised you, you're still using that person as the template for your identity. They are still what you're referring to when it comes to thinking yourself up. You're just making yourself into the opposite. That's not real freedom. That's rebellion. We want to be free to flit around like the hummingbird in back of me. He's come to teach us a lesson. Can't really be free if we're fighting the past. That's the tether. You have to break that tether. You have to decide. You have to choose. You get to choose. Who do you want to be? And you may have to give up some of your rebellion stories and come into conformity when it works for you. All right, so I'm going to wrap up with that and switch over to my subscriber group. If you're not a member of that, you can become a member. I have private videos over there, and just more options. So I will talk to you guys here in like a minute or two. Have a good day.